2011, let's go back to when the economy was suffering a little bit. $700 million in cuts to water management. $700 million. Do you know what happens when you make cuts like that and you don't restore the funding? Well, there's no oversight, there's less oversight, there's less monitoring, there's less testing. The green algae bloom that you see, you can attribute to those in power that cut the funding for water management, that cut the enviro funding year after year while we stood in the back of the room and screamed and hollered. Now the algae is blooming and people are paying attention, but for years we've been begging for funding and we've protested the slashing of these water management districts. It's not just that, it's the defunding or the deregulating of chemicals that fall into the water line. There's a chemical in Roundup that's been allowed because of deregulation to be sprayed too close to the coastline. That's what you're seeing.
Because I have been one of the leaders in the legislature on environmental legislation for the last 8 years. I've passed many bills in this area, including alternative water supply. I've led the fight on fracking. But now we need to address discharges into Lake Okeechobee that feed into what is the green algae problem in South Florida. We have funded over $200 million each for the next 4 years on building critical infrastructure to get the Herbert Hoover Dike repairs complete, build the C43 and C44 reservoirs to store water and keep the discharges from happening. But the one thing that has not been addressed, and the one thing that I would address, is the 99% of water that comes into the lake is from the north. We have got to deal with storage north of Lake Okeechobee to deal with the stormwater discharges coming out over Orlando, Kissimmee, and the watershed north of the lake. So that is going to be the environmental bill that I will file.
Thank you both for great answers. It is your turn, Tiger Bay Club members, to ask questions. Please be civilized, on target.
I just have, there's a guy named Craig Newman. He signed up, joined today. Congratulations to be in the hopes of asking a question. So I'm sure he gets his little sticker. So, Dr. Manis, any section of the room you want me to?
Well, since you're in the back, hands up in the back. Who would like to ask a question?
Ladies
the young
first.
woman, right,
Okay.
straight away.
Identify yourself.
I'm sorry I'm pointing. My mother always said it was bad manners. But
Elizabeth Corwin, I have a question about standard ground. Would you fix standard ground, and if so, how?
all right, we'll start with Representative Cruz.
Now, I've always been after a fixed for stand your ground. You'll see that my opponent is not. When she was first elected, she was an ardent supporter of Arizona-style immigration. She was not a supporter of any process or any law that would protect the minority communities. And she is an ardent supporter of guns. So she will not do anything that takes away the rights or the safety of gun owners. And one child dies every 17 hours, but falls on deaf ears.
Senator Young.
Well, I would beg to differ with that characterization because I did vote for the school safety bill that did increase, have significant reforms on gun ownership in the state of Florida, where the lady sitting next to me voted no. But in terms of stand your ground, I think we're going to see how this plays out in Pinellas County, Ms. Corwin. This was a really difficult case, and I think the state attorney did it just right in terms of prosecuting the shooter in that case. But it may be that we need to take another look at that if this case goes the wrong, the way that I think different than the way we all believe it's going to go. So thank you for the question.
Okay, next question. Gentleman over here, and then we'll move up this way.
Okay, all right, here we go. Identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Patrick Bascat, and I too am a new member of Tiger Bay.
Ladies, you get a good applause for bringing in new members. They go.
No, I came to see Betty Castor. One of my heroes in life. Senator, after Parkland, there was an up and down vote on assault weapons ban in the Senate. I've heard conflicting yes, no, maybe, whatever. Did you vote for a ban of assault weapons? And if you did, good. If you didn't, good. But why? Why did you vote? Did you vote yes or no to assault weapon ban in the Senate?
I'm going to let this go one time, but you must address your questions to both candidates in fairness to each of them.
I apologize.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Basket. I did vote on that amendment. I voted no, and I'll tell you why. There are 2 reasons. The first is, had an assault weapons ban gone onto the bill, it was an amendment, had it gone onto the bill, it would have killed the bill and we would have had nothing. Representative Cruz would have been able to have her way, and rather than have these significant reforms, including 100 schools in Hillsborough County that now have a safety officer, we would have had nothing. And whether you think the bill went too far or not far enough, in my view, it's better to work with the other party, compromise, move the ball down the field if you can, and get something done that is positive for the state of Florida. And again, I would remind you that 20 dangerous, mentally unstable people right here in Hillsborough County have had their weapons confiscated by the sheriff because of this bill. We gave them the authority to do that. So thank you for the question.
Our next question, please.
I thought I had to answer the same one.
Okay, all right, you can answer that, sure.
I'm just, I'm astounded by what I'm hearing. Because I know, and most of the state, and certainly everyone in the Capitol knows, and you referred to me being, what did you say, something about the teachers union? Well, let me just tell you this. It is not the teachers union that I just support, it's every teacher in the state of Florida. And that includes every teacher. And I'm proud to be supported by them, and I am proud to stand up for public education. But I will tell everyone this, and I think most people know this. When the nation was watching, when the students of Parkland were there, when the parents were there, kids and parents that lost their friends and their families, when it came time for a vote against an assault rifle, a weapon of war, Dana was nowhere to be found. She ran and hid. She hid from the vote because she is owned by the NRA. That's why she couldn't make the decision between the people in her district or the people that own her. So don't let any of that stuff come through, and don't believe anything other than the fact that she hid from the vote.
Personal accusation.
As I just told Mr. Basket, I voted no on that amendment, and if you question that, Representative Cruz, you should look in the Journal of the Florida Senate.
I have the original paper, Dana, but you had that vote. You took that vote and you had it manipulated. But Senator Rader took the original printout where you missed the vote.
Representative Cruz, you're interrupting.
I'm sorry.
The Senate Journal is the official journal of the Florida Senate, and my vote is recorded. It is no. It did not change the outcome of the vote. And if anyone is curious, I'm sure that my staff can get you a copy of the official vote.
You hid
Okay,
from
let's
the vote.
move on to the next question, please, in the back.
In the spirit of civility and working together in Tallahassee to get things done, can each of you name 2 or 3 instances when you went against your party and tell us why?
That was Minnie Murphy, by the way.
All right, I think it's Representative Cruz's turn to go first.
There was a vote on scope of practice for physicians, and I was the only no vote on the entire board. Everyone voted yes for that bill, but I did not. There was a vote for the nursing homes, and I was the lone no vote on the board. I've oftentimes moved away from my party. I am a moderate Democrat who is a business-friendly Democrat, so oftentimes I've broken with my party.
Senator Young.
Yes, thank you. I'll start with one that was just this session. There was a vote on an education bill, 7055, that would have decertified the teachers union if half of the members were not members of the union, half of the teachers in the county. I agreed with many things in the bill, but I then and still do today believe that provision is unconstitutional, and I don't believe that we should be singling out the teachers union, so I voted against that bill. The second time is I was actually the leader in the anti-fracking movement in the state of Florida. For the past 2 years, I have led the charge in the Florida Senate to completely ban fracking in the state of Florida. And it's actually been a really exciting adventure because I've met a lot of wonderful people in the environmental community all over the state of Florida. And Republicans don't protest a lot, we just don't. And so I got to go out and be part of this anti-fracking movement on the steps of the Capitol. It was a good time, and it was something new for me. So,
All right,
fracking bill.
thank you. Next question.
Supposed to go to a gentleman next.
No, not necessarily.
If you
Right
want,
back
but if
there.
you want.
She's-
I'll pretend I'm a gentleman. I'm Diane Egner, and my question is, with 27% of the electorate now registered as no party, would you support an open primary?
All right, thanks that are younger first on this one.
Thank you. That's a really great question. I actually have a no-party affiliation voter in my house. My 18-year-old voted. I registered in PA when she registered to vote, which we thought was funny. But she is she is her own person, and I think that we have got to find a way to enfranchise the independent voter, which is 30% of this district. So I support the concept. I'd like to see, what do they call it, the jungle primary? I don't think that would work very well here, but there are a lot of different ways of doing this around the country, and I am open to the conversation.
Representative Cruz.
I agree. I think that we see the trajectory of NPA or independence on a glide path that's going straight up into the air. I've watched this for the last 2 years as the minority house leader. I think that there are much too many voters that are going that route, and we are disenfranchising them. So I think that we should take a look, and I think an open primary could be the answer.
By the way, on our data, 18 to 21-year-olds among those registered in Florida right now, nearly 40% are NPAs. And the three youngest generations in Florida, the Gen Xers, the millennials, and the hashtag generation, the 18 to 21-year-olds, now make up 52% of Florida's registered voters. A lot of people don't realize that. Next question.
Where do you want me to go? Here? Anybody here?
You have a gentleman there, yes. Then we'll come to the middle.
I am standing there.
Cannabis hearing.
How did you guess? In 2016, Gary Stein, I'm the executive director of Clarity PAC. In 2016, 71.2% of the voters voted for Amendment 2, which legalized medical cannabis in the state of Florida. And in 2017, starting with the Senate Health Policy Committee, the House and Senate and the legislature worked very, very hard to create the implementing bill. And in fact, throughout that session and beyond. And unfortunately, after that, the lawsuits began. We spent over $2 million on lawsuits, and the ruling came out that many parts of that implementing bill were unconstitutional. And they asked for more money for more
Questions, sir, please.
What happened? Why was it unconstitutional?
All right, Senator Young, you're first.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for being here, Gary. I actually chair the Senate Health Policy Committee, so I was very involved in implementing the amendment that was for voter support. I don't know why the courts ruled the way they did, but I'll tell you my frustration has been the complete disinterest by the Florida Department of Health in implementing the amendment and the bill the way we passed it and following the will of the voters. They've been slow walking this, they've not been issuing licenses, they've been slow to issue ID cards for sick Floridians that need coverage. They need to have their cards to get their medicine, and I am absolutely frustrated with the department. Christian Bax, who was the head of it, is now gone, which is a good thing. And I just hope that we can get this moving, and if it's not moving, the next session we're going to put the hammer down and really force their hand.
Representative Cruz.
I think that Senator Young is right on this. But remember, it is dragging your feet and not putting staff or enough staff into an office to implement this program. I had several people call me in my office about their medical marijuana card, and it was one excuse after another. They didn't have the app. They didn't have the check. And this happened not one time, but 2 times. They were overworked and underfunded, and that is a directive of leadership. That is leadership, and that is defying the will of the people. Didn't really want this, so let's just make it not happen. It's understaffed, and let's make this not happen. I saw it also with the amendment for our environment. You know, we went around the legislature and created this so that we could save our environment. Yet you see the money being diverted to agriculture. You see it's slow on spending. It's the same stuff, different day. You want change? Change the people in leadership.
You'd like me to move to the bills?
Yes, of course. There's one in back of you, the gentleman right in back of you.
The show?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, identify yourself and...
You recognize me as a gentleman. My question, ladies.
Name.
My name is Sam Junta. I'm a retired CPA. May I ask this? What rules could you advocate to implement or change in the legislature in order to have votes on the single issue? As we have heard on some of the answers, yes, I voted for that, but no, I didn't, because this thing was in there and I was against it, so I voted against it, and I voted for it next time when it came up because this was not in there, and et cetera, et cetera. Also,
No, one question, sir. That's a question. Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Junta.
Question is, you know, what rules would you put in place, single issue votes instead of omnibus or trains or
Well, and-
bundling like the
I
Constitution?
see that as a problem, but I don't understand, I don't know a solution to that, and maybe Senator Young does, but I will tell you that there are many members that start out with a great bill, with great intentions, and by the time, especially toward the end of session, by the time the bill returns to them with amendments tacked on, you don't even recognize your own bill. I've seen members kill their own bill. So, Mr. Junta, that's a good question, to which I'm not positive the answer.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I'll just add on to what Representative Cruz said. There is a requirement that they be single subject bills, but that can, that's why if the title is an act related to education, they can have, 50 different subjects within the education silo. It's been a particular problem the last 2 years because the House leadership was particularly fond of putting 100 issues together, many of which one would like, many of which one wouldn't like, and the example I gave earlier on House Bill 7055, it had some good things in there for education, but it had what I consider to be an unconstitutional provision which would decertify the teachers union. I am a lawyer, I am a state senator, and in both of those capacities, I take an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States and the state of Florida. So I was compelled to vote no on a bill that had it been broken to pieces, I probably would have voted yes on almost all of it. So thank you.
We see a hand over here.
Okay.